Are you ready to embark on a relaxing journey into our world? It's time to close your eyes and get rid of your worries. This video is not just a story. It's a gentle experience designed just for you. So, relax. Take a deep breath. Raghad, my sweet, leave Donna. She doesn't know what to say. I will stop her alone. My father and mother are your father and mother. She interrupted me. Not true, I have no mother or father and no one loves me. What about me, Walid? Don't I love you? Consider me your mother, father, and everything. Raghad stopped crying, looked at me for a moment, then said, But you don't have a mustache. I laughed. This small girl ideas are extremely simple and spontaneous. The little girl smiled contentedly and hugged me happily. I love you so much, Walid, and when I grow up, I will take you with me to my new home. Playing is children's favorite hobby ever, and because I am Walid the Great, and because Dana, she, Party Mahdi, Raghad did not find anyone to play with in this house of ours except Samer. They often spent long hours playing together, and perhaps this was a good outlet for the little girl. When Raghad lived in my room, whenever she stayed in the room for one reason or another, she would also come, and she quietly worked on her coloring book, and that made me happy. I used to remember my lessons and look at them from time to time. After she settled in her room, I no longer saw her with me. She often spent time playing with Samer now. One day I returned from school, and when I entered the house, I found the little girl watching TV. Raghad, I'm back. She crossed and opened my arms, as she is accustomed to coming to my embrace whenever I return from school, as if about her longing and missing me. The little girl smiled and then jumped up, intending to come to me. At the same moment, my brother Samer entered the same room and he says, I fixed it, Raghad, let's go. In a way that surprised me and that I did not expect, I turned to Samer and ran towards him, and they left the room together. My arms were still hanging in the air, waiting for the little girl. I looked around to make sure no one had seen this. This had happened. It would be a normal situation, but I felt angry and disappointed. At that moment, what is Raghad distracting from me? I followed the two and saw them riding Samer's bike, which seemed to have recently suffered a defect that he fixed. Samer, a while ago. I went to my room and lay on my bed and started thinking. Recently, several things have appeared that occupy the little girl, such as school, homework, and her new friends. And Raghad was very happy as she sat in the back seat. Raghad. Why can't I get her out of my head now? She is an annoying child who only loves to play and be taken care of. A big and tedious responsibility was placed on my shoulders, and here I am finally free. In fact, thinking about this little girl kept me busy all that day. I couldn't concentrate on studying, and just before sunset I decided to take a walk down the street in order to expel Raghad from my mind. The weather was nice and breezy, and I enjoyed my little walk. On my way, I met a person I hate very much. He is Ammar. This Ammar is the only son of a wealthy man, and he is my classmate at school. He is an obnoxious boy, a playboy with bad manners, known and famous among everyone for his deviance and corruption. And he was the last thing I wanted to meet while I was in a bad mood today. Walid, are you loitering in the streets instead of studying? I will expose you tomorrow at school. He said this to me and let out a strong, obnoxious laugh. I turned my back to him and walked away, ignoring him. He said, wait, why don't you come with me and have a little fun? I promise you that you will succeed against everyone's will, like me. I turned to Ammar and said angrily, "Get away from me, you hateful person. I have no honor in talking to someone like you, you corrupt pervert." I don't know what prompted me to say that because I'm not used to directing such words to anyone. I was upset, but Ammar felt angry, and he threw a strong, painful punch at me, and we fought. Since that day, he and I have been in a constant quarrel, and he never stops. He provokes me. Whenever he finds the opportunity, I ignore him sometimes and fight with him at other times. And the matter between us ended in the worst ending, as you will see. On my way back home, I passed by a library, and I found myself entering it and searching through coloring books. Children, and I buy a new set. For Raghad. I will admit, I failed to put her out of my... I thought I wouldn't attract her attention while she was happy with my brother and the two birds, so I decided to go inside. The house and I walked toward the door, while holding the small bag containing the coloring books. "Child," her sharp voice reached me, so I turned back and saw her coming, running towards me with her arms open and laughing big. I opened my arms and received her in my arms, and I carried her happily and spun her around a few times. "My little one, I brought you something you like." I looked at the bag, then snatched it from my hand and examined what was inside. She let out a shout of joy and grabbed my neck so tightly that it almost suffocated me. Then she said, "Color with me?" I smiled contentedly, even happily, and said, "Your order, ma'am." I think, indeed I am very certain, that I have become obsessed with this child in a way that I could not have imagined or done account. And I will definitely go crazy if something bad happens to her. God forbid. 3 things occupy my mind and worry me a lot at the moment: my studies and exams, little Raghad, and the deteriorating political situation in our town that threatens war. It's about to happen. It's Wednesday. I didn't go to school because my mother was a little unwell in the morning and decided to stay home her side. It's in good condition now, don't worry. I was sitting on the wooden chair behind my small desk, with a group of my books and notebooks open, scattered on the desk. I spent many hours studying today, but the 3 things did not leave my mind. Studying is something that is in my hands and I can control it, so here I am studying hard. The country's political situation is something that is not in my hands and I cannot do anything about it. As for little Raghad, she is in my hands and I have no control over my affairs with her. And oh, Raghad, it seems, thinking deeply about some things makes them jump out of your head and appear before your eyes. This is what towards me. Walid, The teacher taught us how to make a wish box. Come on, help me make one big enough for all my wishes quickly. I did not understand anything. This girl was in my head seconds ago, and she was playing with Sammer, as I remember. I looked at her and smiled, and I was amazed at her situation. Take it easy, my little one. Wait. When did you get back from school? She answered me quickly, extending her hand and holding my hand, wanting me to get up. Now I'm back. Look at the method on this page. Come on, make me a big box. She took the book from her hand and took a look. It is a lesson that teaches children how to make a cylindrical shape out of paper. And my little girl came to me like a missile, wanting me to make one. I looked at her and smiled. And since I know her well, I am sure that she will not calm down until I carry out her orders. This is impulsive, I said. Okay, little lady. I will search among my things for strong paper suitable for this. Half an hour later, before us was a beautiful cylinder decorated with affixed stamps, with a top slot that let in cash, metal coins, paper money, and paper wishes can also be entered. Raghad flew joy this great achievement. She took the cylindrical box and ran quickly towards the door. To where? I asked her, and she answered me without stopping or turning to me. I'll show her to Sammer. And she left. I waited for her to come back, but she didn't come back. She must have gotten lost with Sammer and forgotten me. You even forgot to say thank you or close the door. Not important. I will push this annoying thought out of my mind and devote myself to my books, or even to the country's political issues. This is more useful. An hour later, Raghad returned. The box was still in her hand, and in her other hand was a pen. She approached me and said, Walid, write the word wish box on the box. She took the box and pen and wrote the word, and returned them to her without any comment or even a smile. Are we finished? I turned my attention from her to the book in front of me on the desk, waiting for her to leave. You should notice that she didn't thank me. Child. I slowly looked up at her. She was smiling and her cheeks were slightly flushed. It must be realized that she did not thank me. I said in a somewhat dry tone, What now? Will you not give me a little paper? It seems that the idea of thanking me does not even occur to her. I took my small notebook on the desk, extracted a white sheet of paper from it, and handed it to Raghad. The little girl took it and said quickly, Thanks. Then I walked away. However, she went to my bed, sat on it, and placed a note on the adjacent table. I thought she would come out, the box and the paper, and I was about to write. I forced my eyes to return to the abandoned book, but my mind remained fixed on that table. Child. Once again, she called me, and I looked at her. Yes? She asked me. How do I write the word when? I looked around, looking for the small tablet on. Yes, baby girl? How do I write the word Akbar? She wrote the word in large handwriting on the board and raised it to look at it. Another few seconds. Then she asked me again, Child? I smiled. The way she says my name and calls me from one moment to the next makes anyone smile. What, princess? How do I write the word will? I wrote the word and showed it to her. My little girl had only recently started learning to write words in cursive letters, and she knows only a few of them. How innocent, simple, and spontaneous she is. What a child. She raised her head and found me looking at her, so she asked directly. I kept watching her and contemplating her with sympathy, with pleasure, and how do I write the word marry? Suddenly I woke up from the trance of innocent contemplation. There is a strange, intrusive word that reached my ears out of place. I stared at Raghad with interest and amazement. Did she say I get married? I get married. Don't you notice that it is a somewhat big word? Indeed, it is very big. I asked her to make sure. What, Raghad? She said very simply, I get married. How do I write it? I am amazed and surprised. She looked at me, waiting for me to write the word on her little board. I hesitated and absent-mindedly wrote to the word, the big one, slowly with my pen. Then I showed it to her and she started writing it, literally. She finished writing, so she placed the clipboard on my desk, waiting for the next word. I waited, and I waited, but she didn't speak. Through I saw her fold the little paper, then insert it. The hole inside the safety box. She didn't ask me anything. When I grow up, I will get married. The name that followed the word marry is a name that Raghad knows how to write, like any of the names of our family members or friends, like Walid or Samer or any man. Little Raghad, what are you doing? Now she's coming, she's towards me, with the box in her hand. Walid, write your wish. Raghad was closing her eyes to assure me that she did not see my wish. What wish do you expect that I entered into the wish box of my dear little girl? I won't tell you. After I finished the matter, Raghad asked me to keep the box in one of the shelves of my library because she was afraid that she would lose it, or that Dana would discover its presence if it remained in her room. Walid, never open the box. I promise you. Raghad smiled, then headed towards the door to leave the room, saying, after she left, I was overcome by an intense desire to know what she had written in her paper. I almost broke my promise and opened the box out of extreme curiosity, but I broke myself violently. I will not disappoint the little girl's trust in me. Never. I will tell Samer that I am finished. When I grow up, I will get married. Who, Raghad? From? That same afternoon, my father decided to take us for a short walk to an amusement park, as per Dana's request and insistence. I didn't want to go because I was no longer a child and the amusement park did not arouse any interest in me. But my mother convinced me, going for recreation to resume school. We had a good time. Raghad stood in front of a scary game and insisted on trying it. Of course, no one agreed to let her ride this terrifying express train. As I told you, when she wants something, she will not rest until she gets it. And when she cries, she turns from Raghad to thunder. My father rebuked her as a means of discipline, as she had to obey his orders when he ordered her to do something. Raghad stopped crying and walked with us reluctantly. She was walking with her head down and her tears falling to the ground. I can't bear to see her like this at all. Nothing shakes me like seeing her sad in the midst of tears. Okay, Raghad, just for the first and last time, I will ride this train with you so you can see how scary and terrifying it is. My parents objected, but I said, I will hold her well, so don't worry. Their objection was actually to me, Ammar, the mean one. From Walid! Very amazing. She skipped school to play with the kids. Great! I ignored him, and the little girl and I walked away, but he came back to haunt me with malicious, provocative words that I could not ignore, and we started a new fight. A group of people, including my father, intervened to resolve our dispute after a few minutes. Ammar, because of my strong punch to the face, blood flowed from his nose. He was repeating, "You will regret this, Walid. You will pay the price." As for Raghad, who was seeing me, for the first time in her life, fighting with someone and hurting him, she seemed terrified. I clung to my mother in fear. When we returned home, my father scolded me severely for my behavior in the amusement park and for fighting. And he said, "I thought you had become a man." This is a verbal word that is much more powerful than Ammar's punches. I was very upset, and when I entered my room, I angrily scattered the books and notebooks that were on top of my desk. I don't know why me. Nervous and tense today, and for quite some time now. Are these upcoming exams? After a while, there was a knock on the door. Then it opened quietly. "And all of this is you. You spoiled ragdoll." It was Raghad, child. As soon as she said my name, I interrupted her sharply. "Go back to your room, Raghad. Immediately." She looked at me while she was still standing at the door, so she gave her a sharp look of anger and shouted, "I said go. Aren't you listening?" The little girl quickly closed the door out of panic. It was the first time I was cruel to Raghad, and how much I regretted it afterwards. I took a look at the security box, then grabbed it and tried to tear it up. Then she pushed him away in the last moment. I wanted to take out I couldn't sleep that night. I started tossing and turning on my bed, and the three things, study, war, and Raghad, conspired against me and caused me insomnia and a severe headache. Oh my God, I'm tired. To hell with studying, war, as well as go to hell. And Raghad, pleasant, let me go to Raghad. I jumped out of my bed with a very urgent desire to see the little girl. She must be asleep now. How cruel I was to her. How I regret it. I walked slowly until I entered Raghad's room, and I was amazed to see darkness enveloping it. My little girl is afraid to sleep in the dark and insists on turning on the dim light. I approached the bed and looked carefully for the little girl's face, but I did not see it. Raghad was in the room. The lamp. The dim room next to her bed, and I was terrified when I saw the bed empty. I got up in panic, and I looked around. Then I turned on the strong lamp and looked at everything. I didn't. I left the room like crazy and went straight to Dana's room, then Samar, then all the rooms of the house and its parts, and I did not leave a single meter of it without being searched except for my father's room. I walked, reeling and clinging to my last hope that Raghad would be there. I stopped at the door, I raised my hand in preparation for his knock, but my strength betrayed me. Anxiety, even panic and fear for Raghad possessed me, throwing aside any sound thinking from my head. I knocked on the door, knocking successively, making anyone feel panic. A few seconds later, my mother stood in front of me in fear. "Walid, is that okay, son? What if Raghad is not here? Where can you be?" I took several successive breaths and then said, "Is Raghad here?" I was staring into my mother's eyes as if I wanted to penetrate her brain to know the answer before she spoke it. "Say yes, Mom. Please." "Yes." She slept here. An iceberg had fallen over my head when I heard her answer. All my muscles suddenly relaxed and I staggered as I took a step back until I sat on one of the chairs. My mother came towards me, took a quick look at the wall clock, then looked at me. "She came to me crying yesterday and said that you were angry with her and you took her out of your room. She was very sad. Maybe my mother wants to blame me for my behavior with Raghad. Please, Mother, it is enough. I have had more than enough remorse. Don't you see that I have not slept until this hour because of that? Sorry to bother you, Mother. Good night." Pleasant. What are you doing to me? I got up late the next morning, and when I went to the kitchen, I found my mother busy preparing food. Raghad plays with some dolls next to her. When Raghad saw me, she smiled at her, but she got up and clung to my mother, as if asking for protection. I was very upset by this. Has my beloved child become afraid of me? "Raghad, come to me." She did not move, but rather clung to my mother more, which made me feel very distressed, so I left the kitchen immediately. She will forget after a while. She is just a child, and children forget quickly. Rather, it is better that you do not forget, so that you stay away from me and I can get rid of one of my worries. In the evening, Hassan and her two children, Hassan and Nahla, came to visit us. Hassan is Raghad's only aunt, who was previously taking care of her after the death of her parents. Hassan is her eldest son, who is 7 years old, I think. Nahla is a few months younger than Raghad. A new brother is about to join this family. It seems Raghad loves her aunt very much, and the aunt visits us from time to time to check on Raghad. Our house has turned into a children's playground. Playing, laughing, crying, quarreling, fighting, cheering, screaming. They were all happy, but I stayed in my room and studied. The sounds then disappeared completely, so I concluded that the guests had left. "Where is Raghad?" I directed my question to my mother, and she replied. She insisted on going with her aunt, and since tomorrow was a big day, I let her go to spend the night with them. I have to go with her today and today only? I lost my appetite for food, and I only ate a little. I entered the house while my father waited in the car. The children, Raghad, Nahla, and Hassan, were playing with some games in one of the rooms. When they saw me, they stopped playing and stared at me. Do I look scary? Maybe because I'm tall and sort of big. I smiled at these little creatures and then said none of them smiled or moved a finger. It was the first sentence Raghad uttered. She does not want to return home. What happened to this small? Why you do not want to come close to me anymore? I aided this because Hassan's mother started stroking the little girl's head and calming her down and repeating, "Hello, my dears. Haven't you had enough of playing? I turned my gaze to my little girl, Raghad, and said, addressing her, "One, my sweet little one, it's time to go home." "I don't want what, Raghad?" "We must go back now because tomorrow you will go to school. I will stay here, Pleasant. We will bring you here to play every day if you want. Come on, our father's waiting in the car." She didn't seem determined to get up. And now? What should I do with this little girl?